Good morning, committee. I'm Tanya Sorrell, I'm team leader, Built and Cultural Heritage Policy, and today I'm seeking committee endorsement of a submission on 5 policies and a set of guidelines that Heritage New Zealand Pohara Te Aonga have circulated for comment. These policies include the management and use of historic places owned and controlled or vested in Heritage New Zealand, the administration of the Heritage New Zealand list, formerly known as the Register, administration of National Historic Landmarks Program, that's a new program that was enacted by the Heritage New Zealand Pohara Te Aonga Act, the statutory role of advocacy for historical and cultural heritage, and then the administration of archaeological provisions in the HNZ PTA, and the archaeological guidelines for Section 45 approval, and that's for the actual professionals working on archaeological sites. So they consulted this set of policies quite widely for comment. It's an informal comment process. This submission will go directly to the policy writers for incorporation, be summarized, and then brought to the Maori Council and the Heritage New Zealand Board for their review in approval of the policies themselves. The submission itself, our commentary was developed by the Heritage Advisory Panel in collaboration with the Heritage Unit. The one clarification I need to make on the report is that it says it was brought to the IMSB for comment. We actually weren't able to get to IMSB, so they have not seen this as yet. So I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions? So I guess just why people think, I think this is also a really good example of the role of our Heritage Panel and the ability for the Heritage Panel to give guidance on this. Now, remember that?
So, kia ora. So how do you see us having input, noting that it's due tomorrow?
So my understanding is that Heritage New Zealand has been consulting with iwi.
Yep, but I know all that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the IMSB input into the council submission.
So I'm not sure. I was really hoping that we would be able to get this to IMSB for comment, and we just weren't able to get there.
To date, we've had a chance to have a brief look at it. So we have got some comments here that we hope we can table and that they be incorporated into the submission.
Certainly.
Okay. Do you want to talk us?
Yeah, well, if I just generally talk you through it, we didn't have a chance to look at all of the different components of it, but we tried to focus on general comments and then focus in on those areas we thought were critical. We got some general comments around we believe that when making decisions or assessments and actions under the Act, that the views and values of Māori ought to inform them rather than just being taken into account. Want to ensure that Heritage New Zealand has an accurate contact database for Māori to ensure that the relevant iwi and hapu are notified. There's no reference in the documentation to iwi and hapu management plans. They're important documents and they ought to be recognised somewhere in the process. The policies appear to use Māori, tangata whenua, iwi, hapu interchangeably, so a bit more clarity on that, on the definitions around that. We just make a general point of there's a lot of repetitive policies. We highlight a need to encourage New Zealand, Heritage New Zealand to provide resourcing, including funding and training opportunities that support Māori to effectively engage in the process. And the approval of an archaeologist ought to include an approval process that actually has Māori making comment about that archaeologist too, in any given situation. And then we've got more specific comments. I don't know if you want me to briefly touch on them. Yep. Okay, so I think there's a policy 1.4 that encourages applicants to take all practical measures to avoid, etc. Sites. We think the policy is unclear and implies that work that modifies or causes destruction of the site may be undertaken prior to a New Zealand Heritage Authority approval, so we just wanted that kind of checked and clarified so that that isn't kind of an assumption or presumption. I think there's an objective that relates to Māori heritage values respected, taken into account. Again, I think we wanted stronger wording around that. I think I commented about that in the general comment. They say they'll ensure that traditional knowledge associated with archaeological sites will be considered alongside archaeological and heritage assessments when decisions are being made. I think we just wanted to reiterate that traditional knowledge is of equal value, if not more important, than archaeological and heritage knowledge. And I think we had an issue around there's potentially discretion for the applicant in terms of whether they do seek that type of assessment. So we wanted it more clearer that traditional knowledge should be included in the assessment of any site application, which Māori have a relationship with. There's policy 2.2 that relates to encouraging iwi and hapu to engage in the process. We just make a general comment around that. About iwi being fully involved in consents and treaty settlements, so that Heritage New Zealand ought to be active in facilitating engagement and making resources available to iwi and hapu for this to occur, for them to be able to be involved. They promote early involvement of iwi and hapu in projects, that's 2.4. And also, again, in 2.5, they encourage early and meaningful consultation. I think we're just highlighting it's saying the same thing, reworded as one policy. 4.6. Heritage New Zealand manages sensitive information by appropriate processes. Our issue is, however that management looks like, Māori ought to be included in that policy of managing that sensitive information. So it will need to be determined in agreement with the relevant iwi and hapu. Objective 5, historical and cultural heritage knowledge gained through archaeological research. None of the policies under that objective recognise the ability of Heritage New Zealand to support archaeological research by providing training and upskilling. 6.1, HNZ recognise the need for urgency when koiwi tangata are discovered. We want some clarity around what that means. What does urgency mean? And in some situations it might be necessary to leave koiwi in situ rather than for a period of time until arrangements are made for relocation. 6.2, HNZ informs iwi and hapu when discovery of koiwi of Māori origin are reported. I think we just wanted it stronger that they will notify iwi and hapu when discovery of koiwi of Māori origin. 9.1, Heritage New Zealand encourages applicants, etc., to engage in discussions at an early stage. Again, we're just highlighting if that 9.1 Māori are part of that conversation. 9.2, Heritage New Zealand's noting that they need a sufficient level of information about the archaeological site heritage values. Again, it's just clarifying, confirming that includes values Māori associate with the sites. 9.4, HNZ evaluates the effects of heritage through the authority process on a case-by-case basis, but does not support the building of structures on par. Our issue, in some situations, Māori may wish to build structures on par for cultural purposes. That isn't necessarily inconsistent. 2.12, Heritage New Zealand will seek evidence from iwi and hapu that the archaeologist recognises and respects Māori values, etc. And also 12.4, they also encourage an approved archaeologist to involve iwi and hapu in the authority process. Our issue is it's unclear unclear of the relationship between those two policies. If policy 12.2 is met, then policy 12.4 is not necessary. Again, it's just to clarify. So they're our main points.
Yeah.
And happy to table.
You left it a bit late,
So,
guys.
well,
You left it a
it's,
bit late.
Oh, come on, George.
Hey, no one
yeah,
told us.
yeah,
We just
I
got told we
think,
didn't get it.
so councillors, the explanation was, it's unfortunate, I think
You've
this
had the
has been
agenda
a
for us, you
a
don't-
short
Then you
time
give it
frame.
to us.
Can we just not have a discussion on the side? The point was made, councillor Wood, I'm not too sure if you heard it, that there were best endeavours to talk to the IMSB, not through any fault of the IMSB, that was not able to be done. The IMSB have done the right thing, which is actually to bring their points to this meeting where the submission's been discussed. Dr Blakely's had a good look as we've been going through it. Thank you for the very thorough presentation, Member Ngamane, and there's nothing in there that sits at odds with any of the issues that we would have at all. So the recommendation is quite sensibly that we include these submission points raised by the IMSB in our submission, which is the right thing for us to do. There's nothing here that seems that it would sit outside of anything that we would agree with. So I'm happy to move those.
Second.
Seconded. I think Member
No,
Philippi,
just-
did you want to move?
Yeah,
Why
doesn't,
don't you move it?
anyone,
Casey's
yeah,
second.
I just wanted to ask the question around, do we need a recommendation here, Chair, to end up putting it as part of the submission, that's all?
So we've actually included it
Okay,
in our
cool. Thank
submission,
you.
which is better than just having it
Yeah.
tagged on the side. Okay, councillor Watson.
Yeah, I mean, just as a matter of process, I mean, I fully sympathise with the position IMSB are in, but you know, we're voting to endorse something we haven't even seen in black and white. I mean, I'm trying to listen to what Member Ngamane said, and there were a lot of points here, some of which I agree with, other ones which I have questions about. So to be voting on something without even having a copy on it, that doesn't quite strike me as giving things due consideration. I don't know about other members. I'm pretty uncomfortable with that.
And I think in this case, part of it is the debate whether we take advice from our full members of the committee, who are our two IMSB representatives, who advise us that these are points that are critical to them, and include them in our submission. And remember, it is simply a submission. We are not the decision makers on this.
It's a council position though, isn't it?
Yeah, just hang on. No, I'm just listening. Did you, sorry.
I would
what
say
was
it
that?
is, we're still putting forward the council position on this thing.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Cooper.
Oh, no, I was just actually going to say what you were saying, Madam Chair. I mean, in the end, it's a submission and whoever makes the decision will make the decision. But in the absence of anybody else coming up with anything from the Māori point of view, I think at this late stage we have to make an exception and put it in. I mean, what else can we do? Otherwise, we haven't put a full submission in from the council family, of which I must be a part.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Wood.
Well, I'll just take up Councillor Cooper's independent. I thought the Independent Marriage Statute Board is actually an independent body.
Okay, sorry, my
So
mistake.
it's not part of the council
My mistake.
family, but, you know, that's probably would be debated. But, you know, this agenda's been out for a week, and it would have been nice to have had this circulated to us. But we've been dropped on it the last minute. We get the information. You know, there's a lot of information that is expected to be added to the submission. So I would just say, Madam Chair, you know, we've got to treat everybody in the same manner. And I think if councillors start dropping stuff in at the last minute, we're told that you should have circulated this and brought it to the attention of the chair well before the meeting. So I just think we've got to treat everyone on an equal basis. So I just put that forward.
Same day.
Thank you, councillor, and I think most of you who've been part
Well,
of this
that is
committee for a
correct.
long time
Yep.
would know that that's exactly why I make sure that the submissions are brought to us, and I'm usually pretty inclusive. Where possible, we include the views of councillors, debate them and change the submission. And this is exactly what the Independent Māori Statutory Board have brought to us. I've got councillor Cashmore and then member Taipare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I already have a question. That's about the protection of individual property rights, which is about what this country's economy is built upon. And bearing in mind what's been said here, does Heritage New Zealand pay enough attention to property rights of the owners or shareholders as compared to the public good? And I guess that's a question for Dr. Blakely, really.
Well, Madam Chair, in my experience of Heritage New Zealand is they are very conscious of the issue of private property rights, and there is a balancing issue here between, on the one hand, private property rights, on the other hand, public good associated with heritage, and in this case, Maori heritage. So, my view would be that yes, Heritage New Zealand does take a careful account of property rights.
Further to that, does this submission also indicate that degree of balance?
My advice is that it does.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Member Taipare?
Oh, kia ora, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking those points from Leanne. And just as a matter of correctness, I just want to say that the position of the Independent Māori Statutory Board as a family group member of councillors is not correct. Is that we are an independent body, but we are under the same legislative construct, being the Auckland Council Act. So we understand that, and we appreciate it. It's also important to note that it is a legislated obligation on council to take the advice of the Independent Māori Statutory Board. So it's just not about a nice thing to do. It's actually lawful to do so. And the treaty audit has clearly indicated that council has failed to understand its lawful obligations to Māori. So I think it's important to just re-emphasise that it's not just being, as I say, a nice thing to do. It's actually a lawful requirement to do so. And I don't think that we're asking for anything untoward, and that's why I handed you the paper, particularly for Dr. Blakely to review as it was being going through. And we think that it only can but enhance the Auckland Council submission to recognise Māori in their rightful place. Kia ora.
Thank you. And just for clarification, I don't want anyone to think I was just being nice. You are, whether family or not,
No.
full members of this committee, and as such, it's expected to have the right to present exactly as
Sorry,
you have
Madam
done.
Chair.
I
My
don't want
comments
to
were
be
directed to
misinterpreted.
Councillor Cooper.
So, anyone else? I will put that recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against? Carried.
Aye.
And record
Oh,
my
you
vote.
want yours, councillor Stewart and Watson and Cashmore? No. And Penrose? No. Okey doke.